He's always amazing and fantastic. I'm curious to know if there's a few adjectives that we can add on, because we're just hours away from LSU and Clemson, the national championship game. Much anticipated, much awaited. Undefeated versus undefeated. We got Pigskin Pete on the line, so we are asking you to jump in the live chat, bring us your comments, your questions for Pigskin and myself, and we will talk it up as we are just hours away from kickoff in New Orleans. Pigskin Pete, you can deliver it much better than I can. How are you doing today?
I am amazing and fantastic. You already said that, though.
Amazing and fantastic. Is there anything else that we can add to that? Is it a different amazing and fantastic, something else? Is there a nervousness that comes along with today?
That's a good question. No, not nervous. I never get nervous before football games, especially since I'm not the one playing in them. I think anxious would be the better word, as I'm a very impatient person. Just in general, that's probably my biggest flaw. For anybody that knows me, I'm not very patient. But yeah, so the late kickoff, also on top of that, having the 16-day layoff between the Fiesta Bowl, and now I am just ready for them to go ahead and spot the ball and let's get it on.
We've got 13 on the line. We tapped out at about 150 to 170 the last time we had Pixie and Pete on. Nice little draw in the middle of the day, especially. So bring your comments and your questions. I'll be monitoring the live chat. So this is what I've got for you. Yeah, it's been 16 days, and we can gather a whole lot more of an evaluation on Clemson because of the opponent than we can versus LSU because of the type of game. We've gone over that. Has anything changed your mind? Anything that you've heard out of players and coaches' mouths? Anything you've heard from practice? Anything that's uncovered anything in looking at stats or previous games that gives you just a little bit of a different look at either team, any facet of this game?
Not really. Not really compared to the day after the Fiesta Bowl when I started looking at this LSU game compared to now. I still think the matchup to look for is Clemson's receivers against the defensive backs for LSU, Fulton, Stingley Jr., and Delpit. And the same goes the other way around. But the thing that has caught me a little bit off guard when looking at the national perspective from the media members, as far as just people on YouTube or commenters and viewers on my own YouTube channel, is that all they want to talk about is LSU's offense against Clemson's defense. I haven't heard the same amount of talk about Clemson's offense and what they can do against LSU's defense. So I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I think these are two elite offenses with and you're talking about NFL receivers on both sides of the ball, NFL running backs, NFL quarterbacks, obviously with Lawrence and Burrow, and two extremely good offensive lines, two veteran offensive lines. So the story is going to be who makes more of a stir-up as far as the defensive backs go on defense. Will it be Clemson's defensive backs that win maybe a couple more of those battles, or will it be LSU's defensive backs that win a couple of more of those battles? And that is most likely what will decide who wins the football game tonight.
I posted my prediction video earlier today, and I was trying to draw a conclusion in comparison between LSU and Ohio State for obvious reasons, because LSU played a collection of teams that are really good. Florida, Alabama, on down the line, Texas, etc. Good teams, but not elite teams. They haven't played an elite team. I'm not going to consider Oklahoma an elite team. They're not with these three. These three separated themselves, and obviously Clemson won the game against Ohio State. So in a sense, these two separated themselves. So the game that you can draw the best conclusion is, of course, Ohio State and Clemson in terms of elite talent on the field all over the place. Mm-hmm. And so I'm trying to match up LSU versus Ohio State to say, well, I got to make the assumption that Clemson didn't necessarily bring their best, or Ohio State, I think physically and in terms of effort, they most certainly brought their best. Man, that was one of the hardest hitting games I've seen in a long time. I don't mean that, but it's impossible not to make mistakes and so forth and so on. So it's not an A+ game from either team. There's just too much on the line, too many great athletes for teams not to make mistakes, and we saw it. But trying to draw a comparison between, okay, what did Ohio State show us, or what did Clemson show us against Ohio State, versus how do we compare the Buckeyes unit to unit versus LSU? And this is what I'm coming up with. Joe Burrow is a better quarterback than Justin Fields, not by a lot. And if Justin Fields was mobile, to 100%. Of course, he could still run and do some things, but he was just a different quarterback in that game. I think Burrow's better than Fields. I think the LSU wide receivers are slightly better. And I'm not pretending that I've broken down 12 games of game tape and looking at all these units, but I watch a lot of football and watch these teams play. I think the LSU offensive line might be slightly better than Ohio State. I believe J.K. Dobbins is a better running back than Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I think the defensive backfields, LSU, Ohio State, are both elite. They might be the two best in the country. Mm-hmm. I think it's very close there, and I think Ohio State's defensive line is better than LSU's. LSU very talented, but Ohio State better there. I think LSU has better linebackers. I think they're faster, more athletic, and I think that's where Clemson took advantage, both in the run game with Trevor Lawrence and obviously getting Etienne involved in the pass game, matched up on linebackers and safeties for his two big plays that turned out to be the game decider. So I was trying to match up LSU and Ohio State. I don't know, in watching the Buckeyes this season versus watching LSU, what kind of comparisons you're making?
I think it's hard to compare the two teams because, well, first of all, I think if you make the competition they played against comparison, I think it's pretty similar. Of course, LSU fans will tell you different. They'll tell you that they had the hardest schedule, with that 4 or whatever it was, 6 top 10 wins. Of course, they're claiming teams like Texas to be part of those top 10 wins. I just don't think that matters. I think to a lot of people, schedule matters. To Clemson fans, it clearly doesn't for obvious reasons. But at the end of the day, who you played and who you beat means almost nothing in this game by the time the football is kicked off. At the end of the day, talent and coaching is what wins football games, not who you've played or who you haven't. But as far as comparing LSU to Ohio State, I think they're very similar in just the level of talent they have across the board, the level of coaching that they have across the board. So I don't know. I'm one of these people that thinks that this game is going to be close because the Ohio State Clemson game was close. I think you can make a similar comparison in that way. I think Ohio State's defense overall is a little bit better than LSU's, if not a lot better than LSU's. And I think that LSU's offense is a little bit better than Ohio State. So it's a little bit. It's just you flip it, as far as the offense and the defense goes. But at the end of the day, you're still talking about these are probably the most 3 talented teams in the country. I mean, you could throw Alabama in there as well as far as the talent levels. But Ohio State, LSU, Clemson, and Alabama are top to bottom the 4 most talented football teams at the skill positions, and the defensive positions that matter. So I think it's going to be close.
Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. We got Pigskin Pete on the line. Please check him out on YouTube if you have yet to do so. Pigskin Pete right on YouTube, talking Clemson football nonstop, and a whole lot of fun over there. I will see my notifications at times and say, look at Pigskin Pete's doing a little live stream. Jump on there and grab a little knowledge myself. Lock it in here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football as well. Once the season ends, we don't stop. We will have a ton of content coming your way. I'm going to rank all the teams 1 through 130. Going to rank all the conferences, on and on and on. It's coming your way. So just lock it in right here. And I've got my predictions available for tonight's game as well. Before the game, I'm going to do a live stream. I'm going to read off all the predictions that all of you have sent in. So leave your predictions. Don't leave them in the live chat. I'm not going to look at the live chat. Just leave them in the comment section of any video. Pigskin Pete, let's see. Where was I going next with this? Oh, LSU is still a 5.5 point favorite, correct?
I think it's moved up to 6. It's 6.5 or something like that.
Yeah, that's a little heavy for me.
Yeah.
But at the same time, obviously, anytime it's under 1 score, that doesn't mean it can't be covered. You could have a 31-31 game with 30 seconds left and LSU scores the game-winning touchdown. They win by 7. Mm-hmm. So obviously that can happen. But at the same time, with Clemson's credentials, winning 29 consecutive games, defending national champion with all the offensive skill players they have back from that team, and on defense, a lot aside from the defensive line, many of those players, I can't imagine what this line would be if this was whoever that was nondescript last season, was an 8-4 team and just came out of nowhere and went undefeated, and they were sitting here in this spot. and they didn't have Clemson's talent, didn't have the battle-tested resume, all of that, I can't imagine what this line would be. It's a little inflated for me.
Yeah, if you looked at a hypothetical line before the playoff games were played, they did all the hypothetical lines. In other words, if Oklahoma had won and Clemson won, they did a hypothetical line between those two, and they did all different matchups. The hypothetical line in Vegas before the semifinal games were played was Clemson would have been a 1-point underdog to LSU. So LSU goes out against Oklahoma and just completely obliterates them. Clemson has a very close contested game with Ohio State, and that inflated the line in the public view, which is what they start basing the lines off of in the first place. So what we saw was, what did it start out at 3.5, which even as an inflated line at 3.5. So my point here is, and obviously the betting moved it from 3.5 up to where it is now at 6 or whatever. But the guys who know what they know in Vegas, who are making a lot of money, had this as almost basically a pick'em game before the semifinal round. So a little bit of recency bias there and setting that line at 3.5, and a lot of recency bias and the betting that's going on with LSU. Now, if I were to bet, I'm not going to bet this game because I don't ever bet on Clemson games because you never bet with your heart. I've learned that in the past, but I'm not going to bet on this game. But if I were going to bet on this game, if I just as a college football fan and not as a Clemson fan, I think you'd be foolish to put your money on LSU at that big of a line.
Yeah, again, you could put your money on LSU and they're a 5.5 to 6 point favorite, and it could be a tie game and they could score the game-winning touchdown and you win. But a smart bettor, I just don't think if the game could be replicated 100 times, I don't think there's any way LSU covers that spread 51 times, or really you need to cover it about 53 to 54 times to make money. I just don't see it happening because I think Clemson wins roughly half the games anyway. And then for LSU to cover all those other times that they win, I just don't think it would happen. Again, who knows what's going to happen tonight? It could be a really close game and still points at the end of the game.
Yeah,
that happens too. You know, LSU's up by a touchdown and Clemson puts the ball on the carpet, or vice versa. But since LSU's the favorite, we'll throw it out that way, and then it becomes a 14-point game. But it was down to the wire.
Yeah, and I'm no betting expert. I certainly don't want to come off like I am on here, but I do know that the experts do follow trends, and the trend here is this is Clemson's 7th playoff game, if you include playoffs and national championship games. Yep. They've been underdogs in 6 of them. They've covered 5 of them and won 4 of them outright. So that's a trend. As far as
so Clemson just became a favorite against Ohio State, would have been the first one.
Right.
Wow. Mm-hmm. So they were a very slight underdog their first time out against Oklahoma, right? 2015. It was like a 1 or 2 point game, something.
No,
like
I don't think so. I think Oklahoma was favored in that. Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, but they were only like a 1 or 2 point underdog in that.
Oh,
game.
Right.
Like
yeah.
It was really close.
Yeah.
And then of course they were double digits against Alabama, I think both times, or maybe it was more like 7 or 8 the second time, but it was like 10 or 12 in 2015.
Last season, I think it was about 3.5 at game time, if I remember correctly. Okay. Alabama favored.
The thing we need to understand about the Oklahoma game is if Oklahoma played either one of these teams, okay, we'll take LSU because they actually did play, and it was a 35-point game, and it wasn't even that close because they put up 49 points in the first half. The magnitude of the game seems to magnify the difference in talent. You know, if Oklahoma and LSU play during the regular season, most likely we don't see that game. We see something like we saw against Texas, and maybe LSU beats them by 2 touchdowns, and it's a decent game, and they show that they're better. But obviously, LSU's not going out there beating teams as good as Oklahoma, scoring 49 points in the first half. It just seems when the magnitude of the game is in play, that the disparity between the two teams just kind of magnifies, and you get this kind of result when, in actuality, if they played the regular season 10 times, we're not seeing 49-14 at halftime.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
We got Pigskin Pete on the line, and we got our guy KB asking if he can call in. So we got all sorts of issues, KB, if you would try to call in with echoes and trying to transmit that to Pigskin Pete. So we'll ask Pete, when is the next time you're going to do a call-in show, and KB can give you a call?
I usually do one every single week on Friday night, sometime between 7 and 8, and I usually post what time I'm going live earlier that day, on both YouTube and on Twitter.
Folks out there, you guys have been amazing in regards to keeping up with my mess in regards to when I'm going to do a live stream. I just jump on here and do live streams. Sometimes it's at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm amazed that I get 100 people on the line at 3 o'clock in the morning without announcing a live stream. So I appreciate you guys hanging with me. Once we get past the season here in the next couple of weeks, I will announce a live stream schedule for the off season that you can count on and book each and every week. All right. So yeah, KB, jump on line with Pigskin Pete. Hope you subscribe to his channel, and we'll keep talking Clemson and Ohio State. For those of you that are leaving predictions in the live chat, that's certainly great. But if you want me to take count of them and tally them up, leave them in the comment section in any of the videos. And in the pregame live stream, I'm going to run through your predictions. How'd the picks go this year?
For what?
For you.
Which? Oh, you mean for the
football predictions week to week?
I did pretty good. Well, I ended up over 50% barely. I got off to a very, very strong start at the first maybe 4 or 5 weeks, and then the last 3 or 4 weeks I was not doing well. But I ended up, I think, at 55% for the year, picking an average of 4 to 5 games a week.
Okay.
Yeah.
58% against the spread this year. And I pick all the games. I just pick all the top 25 games, which is stupid. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It's not going to help me. But
if you're picking every game and you're getting 58%, that's pretty good.
I can't count on that or guarantee that every year, but that's how it turned out this year. In bowl season, I usually do extremely well, but I finished, I think this might break my tie. I'm going to have to double check, but I think I'm right at 500, maybe a game over. So I didn't do too well on the bowl games. Captain Trips is letting you know, Pigskin, that you guys need to clean up maybe the special teams. You had some kind of a block punt for a safety or something. You're only going to win this game 100-2.
Well, the kicking game is a problem. It's been a problem all year. And if this game comes down to a field goal with BT Potter, I might have a heart attack right here in my own house. That's how serious that is. He's barely over 50%, I think, on the year for kicking. That's awful, really. And he's got a huge leg. He can kick a 60-yarder if he could kick it straight. That's the problem, though. He's really erratic. So I don't know. Yeah, the kicking game is a problem. The rest of the special teams, I can't think of anything else in the special teams that's been a real outlying problem this year. I think they've actually done pretty good. As far as the kickoff game goes, we get a touchback 98% of the kicks or something. So there's not a whole lot of teams returning the ball as far as a kickoff goes. Punting game, I can't really think of any outlying problems there. So it's mainly just the field goal kicking that worries me a little bit.
One big improvement, both in the NFL and college football, I think, in recent years has been the metrics leading to the decisions made by head coaches to go for it on the plus side of the field on fourth down more often than they used to. It used to just be automatic, unless you needed it. There's 30 seconds left in the game, you're down 4, that you're just kicking a field goal. It's fourth down, you're kicking a field goal. It's 4th and a half yard, kick a field goal. And then especially, these guys in the NFL, they're so good. They're like 90-some%. Especially obviously with the extra points where they used to be. But in college football, how many of these guys are reliable? If you've got a kicker making 75% of his kicks, you're in pretty good shape, 75 to 80% of his kicks. And these head coaches used to go for 48-yard field goals when that was a 50% play, as opposed to going for it when you've got a capable offensive line and quarterback and you can get the job done and it's 4th and 2 and you can eventually score 7 points. So somebody has really grinded down the metrics and the analytics on the situational football has really improved in recent years. So that has taken the game out of the hands of the kickers more often than it used to. It used to be a deal where you'd see these guys just knocking each other's heads off for 3.5 hours. And then all of a sudden a kicker comes out and misses a kick and that decides the game and that's it. And we'd see that a lot more than we do now, but still obviously important to have a kicker you can rely on if it's 4th and 12. And you need to send him out there.
Yeah, if it comes down to the kicking game for Clemson, I would not be surprised if they did some sort of trick play. I expected to see a little bit of that in the Ohio State game, but it didn't ever happen. Dabo's not a guy that does a lot of trick plays, But I wouldn't be surprised if, like I said, if it comes down to a kicking situation tonight, he's almost better off, or at least as better off, trying to convert on a fake field goal than he is actually trying to kick it. Unfortunately.
Yeah, that's not necessarily a good thing, but it's worked out well to date with 29 consecutive, obviously. But do you think it really matters where they're playing this game?
That's a good question. I think the crowd noise will favor LSU, obviously. Let's say listen, even the Fiesta Bowl was heavy Ohio State. They said it was something like 70 to 30%. I think you'll see something similar in New Orleans. But so in that way, it could favor LSU. I don't think, they're not playing in Baton Rouge. They're not playing in Death Valley, Louisiana, on that surface that they're used to. So it's not a home field advantage in that way. I actually heard, and I discussed this on my last live show, pretty interesting theory of why this could be a detriment to LSU. And I'm not saying I buy into this for anybody who's going to dispute this. This is just something I heard that I thought was interesting. And the fact that I think they said 80% of the LSU roster are Louisiana kids, Louisiana natives, so that they have the distractions as far as being at home in their home state that Clemson doesn't have, with the buddies from high school, with the extended family members that all still live there. The distractions off of the field could be a problem, being that close to home for this game. Again, I'm not saying I buy into that, but when it comes down to it, as far as in overall home field advantage, I don't think there's much of a home field advantage playing in the Superdome as opposed to going to Baton Rouge.
LSU played Alabama in 2011 in the same location, lost 21-0 in the BCS championship game. 4 years earlier, LSU showed up against Ohio State, won by 14 points to win the national championship in the Superdome as well. Got a lot of LSU scores coming in, 50, 55 points. Thomas Lee, we appreciate you supporting us right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Thomas Lee, I'll get your super chat posted on the screen here as soon as I get to it, but I see it just showed up. So thank you so much for the contribution. We got 77 on the line. We got Pigskin Pete. Got to ask you, how do you set up for the big game or any big game? Is there like a regiment of, a jersey gets draped over the TV screen, or, certain kind of food? Or
no, I'm not very superstitious in that way. My wife, who's a Clemson graduate, is much more fanatical about these big games than I am. So more than preparing for the actual game, I'm preparing for her. I'm preparing for her reaction to the game. She gets me a little bit nervous with her reactions. Yeah, so I mean, as far as the food and the beverages, I'm sure a game of this magnitude, I'll have a couple of cold beers in the fridge ready to go for the hour leading up to the game, to maybe calm me down a little bit. And we'll probably order out something so we don't have to focus on cooking anything. But no super weird or crazy rituals we do around here. Just kind of do the normal football thing, get some wings and some beer, and I sit on my hands so I don't have to strangle my wife when she gets out of control.
Man, you need to set up a live stream just for that.
No,
that'll go viral.
I will get kicked off of YouTube for some of the stuff that's said.
Are you a big pregame guy? Do you like to hear the analysts or whatever else is going on? Yep.
Definitely. I definitely like watching the pregame shows. And for several hours before the game, especially in a game of this magnitude, I like to hear all the people's opinions, on ESPN and Fox Sports and all that sort of thing. And whoever happens to come on YouTube, if they come on YouTube before the game, I'll tune into those as well. So yeah, I like to build up to it. That's something I do enjoy on TV.
I shot a video a few weeks ago that's being it's coming to mind because of the comment that's on the screen by Hype Beast about Trevor Lawrence being the best college quarterback of all time if he pulls off another upset tonight. I shot a video the other day because we're coming to the end of a decade and just have. So for the decade of college football, it's 2010 through 19. I named my top 10 college football quarterbacks of the decade. Would love to get your take on this. So This is before the playoff games, which of course I should have waited, but I've got Andrew Luck at number 10. And some of this obviously is going to be difficult for you to comment on without seeing stats and really going back and seeing what these guys accomplished. But Andrew Luck at number 10, Cam Newton at 9, Lamar Jackson at 8. Got Kellen Moore at number 7. I've got Tua Tagovailoa at 6, Johnny Manziel at 5, Baker Mayfield number 4. I've got Trevor at 3. I've got Marcus Mariota at number 2, and Deshaun Watson, the best quarterback of the decade. That's my list.
Yeah, it's again, like you said, it's hard to really have a debate about some of those guys without looking at all the stats. I guess I'm a little bit surprised that Andrew Luck's at 10. I think
that low.
That low. I'd probably have him in the top 5. And again, this if you're basing it off statistics, I'm sure you're basing it off of more than just statistics. But if it's just statistics, then I can see why he wouldn't be in that conversation. He never played for a national championship or anything of that nature. But I think just as sheer talent, he's got to be one of the top 5 talented quarterbacks, maybe ever, in college football.
Yeah, I was certainly trying to take the NFL bias out of it and what they did later. And of course, he had a very short NFL career, but it was outstanding when he was on the field. But Stanford was a mess before he got there. And that's the combination of Harbaugh and Luck showed up. And this team was 1-11 just a couple of years before he showed up. And his last 2 years, they went 12-1 and 11-2. Finished in the top 10 in the nation, went to BCS bowl games. His numbers were great, as you can imagine, 71%, 37 touchdowns his last 2 years. So Cam Newton was a difficult one because his one season was just so ridiculously over the top. He pretty much carried a team to a national championship, but it was only one season, so that knocked him down on my list.
The only other one this is not one that is in the list, I'm surprised it didn't make the list, was Jameis Winston.
Oh, yeah. He was on the verge. He was right on the fringe. He threw 15 picks his second season.
Right. But he had an unbelievably magical season that year that they ran the table. Yeah. He did.
Definitely. We got Pigskin Pete on the line. Please check him out right here on YouTube, talking Clemson football, the ACC. And he looks at the national landscape as well. This is Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. So, of course, the championship games tonight, but we keep going with all sorts of content on college football past now. So keep it locked in right here. 90 on the line. We appreciate it. I'll get to as many comments, but don't see anything necessarily in by way of questions here. I looked back at the 2012 Chick-fil-A Bowl, posted a video a few days ago. So I thought that was pretty interesting in looking at the game recap and some of the things that were said after the game, and obviously the same two programs. That's the last time they were on the same field, and they were very talented then, but not nearly as good as they are now. The Dabo made the comment after the game, this is a landmark win. And if there's a prophetic statement, that's one right there.
Yeah, that was the beginning of the beginning for what you're seeing now. I was fortunate enough to be at that game in Atlanta. That was on New Year's Eve.
Nice.
And to talk about a great time. Of course, that was before the new dome was built. That was at the old Georgia Dome. But yeah, if you look back at the talent on the field there, Dabo Swinney also made the comment that might have been the best defense that he's ever played against. And that's a pretty big statement when you look at just some of the defense they played just in the playoff era, as far as Alabama's defenses, Ohio State. So, I mean, you're talking about a pretty talented defense there. But if you look at some of the players on Clemson's team at that time, listen, Taj Boyd obviously is a huge figure in folklore at Clemson. He was sort of the beginning, he started the whole movement as far as offensively, at that quarterback position. Now he's been eclipsed a little bit by some of the more talented people that have come in, as far as, Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence. And now we're looking at DJ Uyunglele coming in, and these guys are all just more physically talented than Taj Boyd was. But DeAndre Hopkins, he's going to be a Hall of Famer in the NFL. He might be a top 3 receiver in all of the NFL. You're talking about Sammy Watkins, another guy, huge name in the NFL. At that time, it was Andre Ellington, which was, his NFL career wasn't great, but he was a certified, second or third round talent in the NFL. So all of these guys, and if you looked at on defense at that time, I believe that was Beasley was still there, Grady Jarrett, those guys are big time NFL guys. So there was a lot of talent on that Clemson team, and as talented as that Clemson team was that year, they're probably not even in the ballpark of the talent that's on Clemson's team right now. That's the scary thing about it. So that was a huge landmark win to beat them. I think they were big time underdogs in that game. There was a lot of people thinking that Clemson didn't even belong in that game, and that LSU was possibly the best team in the country that year. There was a lot of LSU fans that thought they deserved to be playing in the national championship and not in the Peach Bowl against Clemson. And so that was a huge, huge win. And that we've seen what's happened since then.
Of course, Alabama won the national championship that year over Notre Dame. Both those teams were undefeated. Well, Notre Dame was undefeated. Alabama had lost to Johnny Manziel and Texas A&M.
Right.
Ohio State went undefeated. They were not eligible. And yeah, of course, LSU. Both teams were 10-2 entering the game. So obviously, LSU lost to Alabama and lost another game. Got tripped up in the SEC as well. But yeah, it was a great game. I remember watching the game. Taj Boyd completed a 4th and 16. It's funny you bring up Hopkins and Sammy Watkins just because, this game, 2012, and the championship game coming up, and then they were just on the same field yesterday.
Right. Yeah. And the 44-16 is, I'm not 44-6. That was the national championship. The 4th and 16 play is obviously a very big number that's repeated a lot in Clemson folklore, because without that play, many people think that we may have lost some of the recruits that were coming in. That win was really big for recruiting, from a recruiting standpoint, and for also just a confidence standpoint for the current team coming into the next season after that. It's been a magical run that doesn't seem to be slowing down ever since then.
So, people are going to start to get sick of you guys like you're the New England Patriots.
Mm-hmm. They already are. I embrace that, because if people aren't sick of you, that means you're not really doing anything. So for 20 years of my life being a lifelong Clemson guy, nobody cared that I was a Clemson fan. Nobody. It didn't matter where I went in the country. It didn't matter where I went in my own state. Nobody cared that I was a Clemson fan. When people started caring that I was a Clemson fan and start saying, here's the thing that how you've arrived. When people start questioning how long you've been a fan, are you a bandwagon fan? How would you? There's no such thing as a bandwagon fan of a team that's no good, right? So when people start asking if you're a bandwagon fan, that's how you know you've hit the lottery.
That's it.
That's it.
Anthony, Mark, where did you? I'm gonna clear up the typo here. Where did you find this guy? Wow. So he's Pigskin Pete. You check out his channel on YouTube, right here on YouTube. Go to Pigskin Pete. You can find it easily. Pigskin Pete. P-E-E-T-E. Bam. Subscribe.
Yeah. Anthony C., he's like most of these losers that come on my channel. He's more obsessed with my eyewear than he is with what I'm saying.
Well, I'm taking that first comment, though, as a compliment.
No, I'm reading the chat here.
Oh, I took it. I'm not seeing anything. Oh, I saw. Yeah, there we go. And a couple of comments later, concerned about the eyewear.
Yeah, a lot of people are more concerned with my eyewear than what I say.
Yeah, people get distracted by such things. Yes,
right.
They do. Mm-hmm. How long have you been at this YouTube thing?
Let's see, October of 2017. So what is that? 2 years and 3 months.
So you're doing much better than I have this deal. Yeah. I've been at this thing since basically I got serious about it in 2013.
Wow, that long, huh?
I've been grinding for a while. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, listen, yeah, you put a great show on, and there's not many people, honestly, and this, what my opinion probably doesn't really mean anything to you anyways. I'm just somebody.
It does.
I'm just some other guy, but I can tell
all the time.
Yeah, I know you do. I know, and I appreciate that. But there's very few people that I watch on YouTube that I respect their point of view on things. And that's not me just saying that nobody else knows what they're talking about, but a lot of people are very easy to see through as far as doing what they do in a effort just to get views or just to get clicks or just to get some sort of notoriety. It's very easy to see the ones that are authentic and that really, really love the sport. And you fit into that category.
Well, I appreciate it. Same to you. I think it's good that I love when you disagree with me, not to start a fight or anything, but you're really respectful and say, hey, Mark, yeah, I'm not buying that. I don't agree with that. I see your perspective. I see where you're going with that, but have you looked at this? So, yeah, Pete and I will go back and forth on a few things here and there, and can definitely respect each other's take. Thomas Lee, again, thank you for the contribution. All right, Buckeye Banshee. So we'll take that that handling to consideration when we read this comment. Clemson cannot generate a pass rush without a blitz. Burrow against the blitz this season completes 74% of his throws for over 1,500 yards, 19 TDs, 2 picks. That's against a blitz. So I guess he's telling us that Burrow's going to shred Clemson.
Clemson can't really generate much of a pass rush without a blitz. He's right about that. I'm assuming Buckeye Banshee. Actually, I know he comments on my channel sometimes. So I know he's a Buckeye fan, and just by his name as well. They did a pretty good job with the pass rush with a blitz against Ohio State in that second half of that football game.
Brian Nunes, will Clemson concede some plays between the 20s and lock down in the red zone and force field goals? Well, we have to see that actually happen. Of course, they're not just conceding plays between the 20s just to do it. Yeah, I think what they showed against Ohio State is, yes, Brent Venables is a genius defensively. They have players that know what they're doing. So, yeah, once it got to be tight spaces, close quarters, didn't have to defend the entire field. Yes, it's a different ball game, and they are really excel at that. But they're not just going to concede plays between the 20s. Yes, it's a different ball game to a certain extent between the 20s. I get your point, Brian.
They are a team that does give up a lot of yards per game, especially between the 20s. But games are won and lost in the red zone. That's all that really matters.
Yeah, in this day and age, you're not going to shut anybody down. So they're not going to shut each other down. We're going to see points, whether we see mid-30s or we see low 50s. I don't know. I'm going to go more in the high 30s category is what I'm expecting here.
I'm expecting, well, I'm sure you were probably going to ask me this before we got off, but I'll go ahead and give you my final score prediction, if that's okay.
Sure. Always
I'm going 45-40, Clemson.
Okay. The 2015 championship game score reversed.
Most of these championship games go high scoring, don't they? I mean,
they really have. If you go back to 2014, we got a 42-20 score. Yeah, we've got the 45-40 score. We got 35-31. We've got 26-20 in overtime with Alabama, Georgia. Then last year we had, of course, 44-16, which it's really amazing to consider what that Clemson defense did against Alabama. Because if you just take the first quarter, because of course, like everybody else, I watched the game, and then I just wanted to see the first quarter for sure again, because I'm thinking Alabama didn't have them. It's not like they were up by 21 points or anything, but I'm just thinking Alabama played really well. Besides that pick six, AJ Terrell, right? Pick six right out of the gate.
Yeah.
I looked at the numbers. Alabama had some ungodly amount of yardage after one quarter. They were up 16-14. They could have went up bigger if they would have converted inside the 5. That's what really tripped them up and started the momentum turnaround for Clemson. But Alabama really, really put up yardage and points in the first quarter, and then just for Clemson to take on that Alabama team for the next 3 quarters and limit them to nothing is just astounding based on the talent on the Alabama side, the coaching ability, the guy pulling the trigger, the receiving core, everything. And then just because it's today's football where nobody grinds it out, there's points being scored by just about everybody. Just to shut down a team, shut out a team for 3 quarters is pretty remarkable.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, it wasn't the same sort of a domination that we saw against Ohio State, but look at the difference in defensively for Clemson in the first half against Ohio State as the second half. So it was a similar type of thing, not comparing the blowout that Clemson put on Alabama to what happened in the Fiesta Bowl. It wasn't it was a closely contested game, but that speaks to the coaching adjustments that Brent Venables makes from the first and second quarter into the second half. And that's the reason I give Clemson an advantage. When I went, and in my opinion, I feel like everything is equal on offense. I know there's going to be people that disagree with Matt. They'll point to yardage and stats and all that sort of thing, and the Heisman Trophy for Joe Burrow. None of that matters. Trophies do not win football games. Teams do. And so that's the reason I think this game could go either way, but I think it's going to be very close.
Got LSU and Clemson, and it should be a good one. I will be surprised if it's not. That's for sure. I'm going to make my way through the rest of the live chat. We got Pigskin Pete on the line. If you've got anything for him, please drop it down in the comments section of the live chat, and I will get to it.
I'm seeing a comment here that I cannot believe is possibly true. Clyde Edwards averaged more yards per carry than ETN playing Power 5 teams. There's no way that's possible. Clemson played 10 Power 5 teams.
Yeah.
Which is one more than LSU played.
Yep.
And you're talking about a difference in, what was it, 2.5 yards per carry on average, maybe 3 between the two backs.
Yeah.
So
I'm guessing it was about 8 flat versus like 6.5 at the best.
It was 8. Yeah. Well, if we're talking about regular season, or if you include the playoff, that might be different. But let's see, 8. It was 8.2 for the regular season. I think it's just over 8 now, because Ohio State did a pretty good job of shutting him down in the run game in the Fiesta Bowl.
Yeah, he went 10 carries for 36 yards.
Yeah, and then he had over 100 yards receiving.
Yeah, Edwards-Helaire, 6.6. I guess possible. But that's a lot to make up in just a couple games, 1.5 yards per carry. I don't think that's the case. But does the importance of these games wane as a Clemson fan in regards to it being paramount that you won a national championship in those first 2 tries, 2015, 2016? You had won one in 30-some years, versus now, if you lose tonight, we'll probably be back next year.
No, it never. I guess what you're asking me is this game any less important to win than, say, the 2016 when we won our first one since 1981? The answer, listen, I can only speak for myself. The answer to me is no. It's just as important, because nothing lasts forever. This thing doesn't seem to be slowing down anytime soon. But I know that things can change so fast in this sport that when things seem to be great and you seem to be on top of the world, there can always be one situation, one coach leaving, something that happens to where this could be the last chance we have in the next 10 years to win a national championship. Not likely, but possible. So no, to me, every single one of these games is cherished and just as important as the one before it or the one after it.
Yeah, look at USC through the 2000s with Pete Carroll. They only won 2 national championships, depending on how you view the titles, but they were dominant for a decade. Well, they haven't gotten back to that.
Exactly. And Alabama's been the kings of college football for the past decade, without a doubt. And it just took a team like Clemson to come up and challenge them. Listen, if Clemson weren't in the picture, how many national championships would Alabama have won this decade? I mean, honestly, they could have won 7 out of 10, conservatively, possibly.
Well, they only took 2 away from them,
right? But so how many did they win in the past? 10 years?
Okay, they won 5 under Saban,
right?
So there you go. Yeah.
So, I mean, that who's to say that somebody doesn't step up and challenge Alabama and Clemson and Ohio State the same way that Clemson's done? Now, who's to say that we don't add another power, whether it's LSU or Georgia or whoever else, Oregon, somebody? Who's to say there's not another power that comes and challenges these teams and makes it harder for a Clemson to keep winning?
Oregon is a good candidate to become the Clemson of the West in regards to dominating a weaker league. They look like a candidate to do that. Mario Cristobal's got that recruiting on a roll right now. They are just annihilating everybody in recruiting. And they were certainly the best team in the conference by far if you look at the championship game this past season.
Yeah, it seems like they're going to be the quote unquote Clemson of the Pac-12, a somewhat weak conference with a team that's just running away with the recruits.
Jay Jobs, is this a joke here? Mark Pigskin, would Dabo prefer a loss to inspire Trevor to play a redemption year in 2020 before joining the NFL?
No, Dabo wouldn't prefer a loss to anything.
No, No, of course he wants Trevor to stay, but the program's bigger than one guy. And yes, he's a legendary quarterback, but Dabo was winning before Trevor. He will win after. He's got that thing on a roll. He doesn't want to miss out on a national championship.
No, listen, he's for all the people that hate Dabo Swinney, which I don't understand why a lot of people do. It's okay to criticize his views or maybe his, the way he conveys his message to his team or to the national media. But this guy, love him or hate him, is the ultimate. This underdog act of his is not an act. It is who he is. It's ingrained in who he is. It's ingrained in how he's always coached, and it will always be a part of who he is. He doesn't want to lose any game, especially a national championship game.
It's gotten to a point, though, where it's very difficult for him to hold this act up. There's not a whole lot to base it on.
I don't know if you watched before we came on live here. I was watching, I think it was First Take, and they had several guests or former players from each team come on and do their predictions and all of that. But the guy that came on for Dexter Lawrence for Clemson was Dexter Lawrence, and they asked him about that whole thing. It's kind of hard to keep selling this as an underdog thing. It's kind of ridiculous, and he said it's not really. Maybe it is kind of ridiculous from the outside, he said, but it is a mindset at Clemson that is ingrained in you from the time that you get there, from the time that you leave. And as far as Dabo goes, it's not an act. He really believes it, and he gets the players to believe it. Everybody else outside of Clemson, South Carolina, they don't care if they believe it. So I, as somebody who follows the sport closely, but is also a Clemson guy, I understand both sides of the coin. I can see why it's getting kind of ridiculous to be playing the underdog card if you're somebody on the outside and looking in. But I also understand the mentality of the people in the state of South Carolina had this underdog mentality for so long that it's hard to let go of that mentality.
So I understand taking the approach that regardless of how much we win, how many championships we pile up, we want to be hungry. We never want to say, we can just take this for granted, just walk out on the field, talent's going to win. We always want to work harder than the other guys because we want to feel like we have to work harder, because if you lose that edge, then you lose that edge and you become a team that's going to go 10-2 every year because you're going to flub up because you're not mentally tough and you're not physically tough. You're talented, but you're going to drop a couple games because you're not going to have that edge that's needed and required to win championships. So I totally get that spin that he doesn't want to lose grasp of that, hey, we need to stay hungry. That makes total sense.
Right. And if people make it easy for him too, let's be honest here. I mean, if Clemson hadn't fallen in the polls the way that they did after just continuing to win, being defending champs, he wouldn't have had that ammo. So they handed him that on a silver platter. The AP voters did. Of course, Las Vegas has a big part to do with it too. Like I just mentioned when we were talking about the betting lines, as far as this playoff run has gone, they've been the underdog in the vast majority of these playoff games, and they've won most of them outright. So, it might be getting old, but the national media is not helping to tamp that down very much.
No, they're not. Nice Guy TV, DeAndre, appreciate the score prediction right there. If you want to have me read it off, leave it in the comment section. But thanks so much for contributing to the channel. So I don't know what you do with these super chats. I feel a little embarrassed asking for money, but at the same time, I remind these people if they love what we do here, they're not going to miss a buck. So maybe $1 a month or something like that you throw our way. and you keep things going and make it easier for us, and not just easier, make it viable for us to spend the time that we do doing what we do. So consider that with Pigskin Pete's live streams, and certainly right here as well.
Yeah, we couldn't do it without them. I don't expect anybody to be donating as well. But listen, if it weren't for people donating over the past couple of years, I'd still be shooting videos on my camera phone, on my cell phone. So it does go back into the channel, and the people that support it are what make it better.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You have any goals for your channel? What would you like that thing to become?
Yeah, I don't know about that, because I feel like obviously the more people that watch, the better. I want to connect with more college football fans, just from an entertainment value level. I think setting a subscriber or a view goal, I don't really go down that road. I don't really know why I don't. I just feel like just continue to put out the quality content and get better at doing it over time that people want to see without compromising, who you are as a content creator. So I don't know. I think if you just do what you know that you like, and what some other or your base likes, then all that sort of thing will take care of itself in the long run.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm asking all the time for people to leave their requests, recommendations, and I will certainly take those into consideration in building out the content that we do here. We have a way that we do it. Pigskin Pete's got a way that he does it. That's what makes it fun, is that we all give it our different take and personality, and invest a little bit differently into what we do.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right. So what are we looking at here? We got just about, this is an 8:30 kickoff, correct?
I
don't know.
They said 8 o'clock, but that's probably what time the broadcast comes on. I'm assuming they'll kick off somewhere around 8:10 or 8:15, probably.
Okay. 6 hours away, folks. So leave your score predictions in the comment section of any of the videos. In the meanwhile, you got 6 hours. Go over to Pigskin Pete on YouTube and check out what he's got available. And of course, here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, I left my prediction video posted earlier this morning. I've got all sorts of ins and outs on this game, and you can't believe what we're going to have available. You know, I'm a note taker, so like I'm just jotting stuff down. You know, I'm going to go through my top. It started out, Pigskin Pete is my top 10 games of the decade, and I couldn't stop at 10, so we're going to go top 25 games of the decade.
25. How long did this take you to make?
Well, the one distinction I made is obviously every week in college football there are crazy games where there were these ridiculous plays, but I'm throwing out the BYU Colorado State game that was 61-48 or whatever, because it was just this crazy game and it was fun, and it might have been one of the more entertaining games, but there's got to be an impact to the game. So I'm not going to dissect every week, every decade and go through that. So there's a lot of Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, you know, the main players, Clemson, of course, in this. Let's see. We got Clemson represented, obviously, quite a few times. The top 25, just couldn't stop at 10. So I just kept going.
Wow, man, that's impressive. 25. It would take me a couple of hours probably to do that, at least.
Yeah, it didn't take too long. Now, to be able to say stuff about them, you know, I obviously chose them for a reason, so I know what happened in the game, but I need to brush up a little bit. My boy thinks the route to going viral status and keeping videos up there that are going to be watched for years and years is that I should just be going nuts on this whole decade theme. You know, best defense is the decade, the best coaches, the best quarterbacks, the best games, on and on and on.
Yeah, that might be true. I was actually, it's funny you mentioned that, because I was toying with the idea of doing a bit more Clemson centric probably than all of college football, but the top 10 players, Clemson players of the decade, or top 10 Clemson players of of the turn of the century, that, you know, since 2000, stuff like that. So people do like to watch that sort of thing. It's not really my personal favorite thing, but viewers love lists.
Yeah. Oh, they do.
They love lists.
They don't seem to like my list. It depends. It depends. But yeah, I at one point thought, yeah, I'm just going to start getting views because I'm just going to constantly name, here are the 10 best quarterbacks, here are the 10 best running backs, here are the 10 best this and that. It didn't necessarily translate. I still have not cracked the code on what people are going to watch. Mississippi State hires Mike Leach, and maybe I got 12 or 1,500 views on that video. I shot when Chad Morris got fired at Arkansas. That thing must have 20,000 views.
Yeah.
I don't see any difference between Arkansas and Mississippi State. And obviously Mike Leach is a big name coach, but that cracking that code of what's going to bring in views on YouTube is a difficult one, at least for me.
Yeah, there's really no way to know. That's why I say just making the things that are interesting to you, and then everything will fall into place. But these lists, and plus if you make a list, here's the other thing. If you make a top 10 list or a top 25 list or whatever the list is, the vast majority of people that are watching are going to completely disagree with that list because they're going to have their own list in their own mind for their own reasons. But I still think that's interesting. I like to hear other people's views on if I ever do a top 5 or a top 10 list. I like to hear their views of why I'm wrong or why I'm stupid or whatever. But it does something about a list really gets people fired up because they have their own ideas of who should be where.
Well, yeah, and that extends past sports. I get suckered into top 10 bands of all time, top 10 male artists of all time. And then if my guy's not there on number 1, I'm pissed off. Again, I'm at number 4 or whatever. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, something about lists, man.
Yeah, Jesse Sullivan, thank you so much for the contribution. I had a chance to see the Heisman Trophy when Woody Dantzler was quarterback at Clemson, got the opportunity to take a picture with and hold it.
Wow, that's awesome.
That's very cool. That's very cool. Because of where I work, I've been able to take pictures with, and I'm not a big I can go take a picture with this. That doesn't really resonate, but we have a company picnic each year. And this past year, there was a Super Bowl trophy there. So I took a picture with that.
Woody Dantzler was a bit ahead of his time. If he would have played nowadays, he would have been a much more popular national quarterback. True dual threat quarterback. He missed that by about 8 or 10 years.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Moco Tiger 843. Pete, you're the man.
Thank you.
I don't know if this is a guy that checks you out on a regular basis that knows about your channel, but there you go.
I don't know, but I'll take it. Believe me, any compliment is welcome here on my channel.
All right, folks, I think we'll wrap it up. We pretty much have beaten this thing to death, not just during this show, but Pigskin Pete, check out his videos and mine as well. If you need more analysis, please, I've got all sorts of angles on this one. And again, I'm going to go live right before the game. I don't know that it's going to be for a long time, but I want to get score predictions out there from you and from me, and post-game analysis as well. And then we dive into the off season. And speaking of the off season, this was my aim a few years ago. You talk about crazy, and I usually take on these crazy series and endeavors and can never quite get through them. I was going to rank the top 5 at every position in every conference.
Oh,
so I did that a couple of years ago, and you're talking about 10 positions. I was separating corners and safeties and et cetera, et cetera. So about positions. You got 5 conferences, you got 5 top 5, and then I was going top 10 nationally, and I didn't quite get through it, but I may take that up this year as well.
That's impressive. That's impressive, and very brave too, because again, you piss some people off with these things. How dare you not have my team's guy ahead of that team's guy or whatever.
That's it.
Yeah.
Pigskin, enjoy the game. Obviously, that's going to all have to do with a win versus a loss.
Yes.
But
so here's the last. I'll take this last opportunity, since this will be the last time I'm on air in any capacity between now and kickoff, because I won't be on my channel between now and the game. I just want to say thank you to all of the people that have supported me on YouTube for this past football season. It's been an amazing football season. I'm sure that Mark Rogers can also feel the same way and about this as I do. Is that we are sad to see the football season end. There's a lot to reflect on as a season, a lot of interesting things that have happened. And this 8 months is going to be painful, but there will be a lot of interesting things happening between now and August. We've already seen a lot of coaching changes, and the transfer portal has added a whole new wrinkle into the college football world as far as things to talk about. So there'll be a lot of things to talk about, but I want to thank all the Clemson fans that have joined me, the LSU fans, obviously the Ohio State fans, probably most of them hate me by now, but a lot of them stuck around. But it's been a great and amazing season. No matter what happens tonight, we are all college football fans. And so thank you all for an amazing season. And we're looking forward to the next one coming up.
I don't think I can top that in any such way. So again, subscribe to Pigskin Pete. Keep it locked in right here as well, and enjoy the game, everybody.
Thank you.